I want to ask you is right now there's some things going on in Ohio. Can you talk a little bit about that for all of our Ohio listeners? And then even if something like this could happen in other states, you can just kind of discuss that.
Absolutely. So what we're kind of looking at nationally is this nationwide push to circumvent the legislative process, not go through the normal channels, and to instead cut straight to state constitutions and amending those state constitutions in what are often citizen-led ballot initiatives. And
Hmm.
that is being particularly weaponized in the pro-abortion sphere because of Dobbs. When Dobbs was decided, and it was the question of whether or not abortion is constitutional was referred back to the states. That opened the door to making it unconstitutional under the state constitution because there was no right to abortion found in the federal constitution over our whole nation. So we have already seen abortion amendments pass in Michigan. And what we saw happen there is after that abortion amendment passed in Michigan, there was a push right after that pass to get rid of parental consent notification requirements. And so, what we
Which
are
is
trying to
crazy.
do, I know, it's like, I think that regardless of where anyone falls with if they support abortion or not, we know parents want to know if their child is pregnant. Parents want to know if their child
Exactly.
is going to a abortion facility and weighing out that decision. They recognize whether they support abortion or not that it is a life altering decision. It's an important decision. And so what we're trying to do is just educate everyone to how this unfolds, because people don't understand when you look at an amendment and you're not an attorney. Sometimes it can be difficult to understand statutory interpretation and how things unfold and connect to um, the statutes that you already have in place. Most people don't know that an amendment like what is on the ballot for Ohio is supersedes anything that we have in statutes passed by our elected officials. So it has more weight as being constitutional and being the guideline for what is constitutional than statutes or legislation that's on the books that's passed by elected officials. So what's important for voters in Ohio to know is that it is being touted as something that that is like a it's just to return us to the Roe standard. It's just a common sense abortion amendment, when in reality it's a Trojan horse that is going to usher in devastating consequences for parental rights in Ohio. I think that many people would find it unthinkable that they would look up and live in a state where um, they would no longer have to give consent. But if you have an amendment like what is proposed for November in Ohio, it says that there cannot be any burden on an individual seeking their right to reproductive decisions, and that there cannot be any prohibiting or interference with someone who assists or an entity that assists with an abortion or other reproductive decision. And so that's how that language is how we see that children are fair grabs, because the word individual doesn't limit this amendment to just adults. So we see that children come in through that terminology, and then we see that anytime that you see it, there's not allowed to be any burden at all. When we look at how the courts have looked at that word and have analyzed that word, we're talking about removing basic health and safety protections for women who are in a vulnerable position. We're talking about things like sanitation for abortion providers. We're talking about making sure that your abortion provider is even a physician,
Oh,
because
wow.
in the text of the amendment, some decisions have to be approved by a physician, like an abortion after viability, if the state has limited abortion on the basis of viability. But there's there's no requirement that the person or entity assisting with an abortion is a doctor. We also look at basic health and safety protections that would get in the way, potentially things like mandatory reporting requirements. Right now, anyone who's working at an abortion facility has to report to law enforcement if there is a client that comes in that reports abuse, or that reports that they are a trafficking victim, or that they are being coerced or forced into that abortion. Even with the laws that we have in the books, we've already had it happen in Ohio where minors have been brought into Planned Parenthood, and by an abuser, someone who was not a minor, brought in a 14-year-old. He was 22, brought in a 14-year-old and paid for her
Oh,
abortion. That was a lawsuit. And then we had another lawsuit in Ohio where a client came in that was a minor, and she was abused by her father and wanted an abortion. And the Planned Parenthood employees did not report that abuse. And so she also
oh
sued.
wow.
And then we had a case in 2018. Kind of this is where it gets into the gender issues, where two biological parents lost custody of their child because they were not willing to move forward with the gender transitioning. A term like
And this is
reproductive
in
decision.
Ohio?
Yes, in Ohio. In Ohio,
Oh
custody was
wow.
taken from parents that did not want to go forward with gender transitioning. When you look at that
Oh
language in
wow.
that amendment, it says reproductive decisions. That's not a term that's in Ohio statutory language. It's something brand new that is designed purposefully to encompass anything touching reproductive organs. That includes sex change
Oh
surgeries,
wow.
that includes hormone therapy, and so that is the avenue that custody will be in jeopardy for parents that are in those custody battles. If you don't provide your child with what they're saying is a right to an abortion, is a right to um, gender uh, gender sex change surgeries, and
Affirmative.
gender hormone therapies, you could be at risk of losing custody.
This is crazy. I mean, every just about every single thing you listed, I think no matter where you are on the scale, you would be on our side. You would be against this bill because when this is just so crazy because some of the stuff is basic. What is so very frustrating about hearing these type of things is unless we, me, you, the audience, unless we're talking about it, people are not going to know. They're going to see the pretty graphics that Planned Parenthood is going to post. They're going to hear the story of the girl who has been affected, and I'm not diminishing her story because I'm sure there's people who have had terrible, terrible experiences and want to share their story. All they're going to hear is unless we are talking about these things, they're not going to know about what's truly in this bill. The average person isn't doing that research for a myriad of reasons. I think you should, but if you have 15 kids, I don't know. I'm not gonna give anybody excuses, but this is really important. We need to be sharing this. I'm definitely, if you have any other information, send that to me and I can leave the link. If there's like a website explaining some of this stuff, I can leave the link in
Yeah.
the description. Because I do think this is something we should be telling people. I'm just flabbergasted. Flabbergasted.
Absolutely. And I mean, like you said, it's about the emotions, the visuals, the design and graphics of the other side. That's something that we need to be working
Mm-hmm.
harder on the pro-life side to do. We can be
Mm-hmm.
aesthetically pleasing in our design and in our presentations, and in how that, we put this information forward. We can absolutely do that. And there are so many stories of women who have experienced have had horrible experiences at abortion facilities in our state, that feel no other space to talk about that experience other than in the comments section of the clinic. And that is so heartbreaking to me. We 100% welcome in anyone that has had an abortion. This is a space where you are welcome
Mm-hmm.
to share your story, your experience, your healing process, your grief, um, all of it. And I can't say the same for the other side. Women who have had an abortion and regret it, in a pro-abortion movement that says shout your abortion, and And abortion is self-care and abortion is healthcare. There's not really a lot of room for women grieving an abortion, or who are struggling with understanding how the sense of loss associated with a miscarriage is related to or fits in with what they're told they shouldn't feel during an abortion. And so it's so important that we welcome those women in, that they know that, we are there for them. We do have love and support and care for them, in healing from their previous abortion, and in moving forward if they are wanting to pursue a family in the future. I think that's so important.
And I think that's a good. I have one more question, but we're kind of wrapping up. I think that's a good thing to like kind of wrap up on is our side um is the loving side. Now are there people who are probably mean? Yeah, I'm sure that's how it is everywhere. But our side truly does care because like I mentioned and you mentioned earlier, if you're going to care about someone from the womb to the tomb, if they have dignity, if they have a right to life, all of these things, like that does not change because they do something that we do not like. They still deserve to have dignity. They still deserve to be treated as a human being. I
Absolutely,
think that's something that our
absolutely.
side does a fairly good job at. Really quick, there was this I shared something anti-abortion related on my Facebook page. I can't even remember what it was. And this guy that's friends with me on Facebook, he only comments when he disagrees. He commented something like, well, you're hurting women. And then one of my friends commented, what about the women who feel they've been hurt from abortion and they feel ashamed, something like that. And he said something that I knew he was going to say this. He said they only feel that way because you guys are making them feel that way. And what really like clicked, I guess, in my head is it's not us. It's something innate. Like innately, you should not hurt your child. Even a lot of these women, they say they'll go in and they just don't want to do it, but they feel obligated, like they have to. Now, once again, I feel like I always have to say, like, give the other side too, because people get all touchy about that. But yes, there are women who are doing it for fun and like who think it's silly or whatnot. And, those women, they're a different type of women, and I'm not going to address them right now. But there are women who feel as if they didn't want to do it, but like because there's something innate in us. And I think that one thing to bring it back together, one thing that our side does is we try to help you realize that and heal. At the end of every Love Life in Charlotte, a lady who had an abortion comes up and she gives like a speech about the recovery, about how God has redeemed her. And it's beautiful. And I'll leave those resources too if you're listening and you've had an abortion and you just want healing, or to, because there's groups all over the country that can talk to you about that. But we do want to hear from you, and you do have a space for that in the
Absolutely.
pro-life movement to speak up and share. And as long as you've repented, like that, I don't care. Like, I mean, I care, but you guys know what I mean. Like, I'm not. If you've repented, God's forgiven you. Who am I to hold it against you if God's already forgiven you? At least that's
There
my how I feel.
there is, you pointed out that there are so many women who, um it's not there was a recent video where a woman um had filmed herself throughout the day of taking the abortion pill, and
Yes,
getting cookies
disgusting.
and
Yeah, I saw that.
watching movies and stuff. And it's like, I think it's important, if the pro abortion movement isn't going to continue to be as tone deaf as it has been, to recognize the variety of women that are still being affected in accordance with the roots of abortion. Um, there, there is a study that recently showed that a large portion of women who talk about who participate in the study and talked about their abortion said that if the circumstances were different, they would have liked to not have had the abortion to continue their pregnancy. Um, it is it's important to keep that in mind as we're navigating this space, because there are so many women who the situation is something that does not validate the taking of life, but we are failing them as a culture in saying that that is okay, and in saying that
Mhm.
the men do not have to step up and support the family.
Mhm.
When in 2014 there was a study that was done where it looked at the responses of over 100 trafficking survivors, and it found that um, there was a shocking trend in coerced or forced abortions that were happening among
Wow.
trafficking victims. And so, how that looks today is that we have Planned Parenthood, whose roots is in racism, the root is in eugenics, the root is in Margaret Sanger. It used to be called the Margaret Sanger Center right here in Cincinnati when my grandma was marching outside of it.
Oh, wow.
But we are looking at in America where 40% of human trafficking survivors are Black, and 40% of women who are receiving an abortion are Black. And this is a problem because
Mhm.
it's being perpetuated by the other side that, reproductive freedom and pro-abortion is something that is meant to help and aid the Black community and women. I can't see that being true when the premise of that argument is that we are better off when there are less of us. That's not an
Mhm.
argument I'm willing to accept. I believe that Black America and America in general is better when everyone has is allowed to take up space, everyone is allowed to exist. And if we don't allow that in America, we should not be surprised when we see things happen that we think point to injustice, like discrimination in the workplace, like instances of police brutality, like Planned Parenthood getting sued for discrimination in the workplace and mistreatment of its employees. We shouldn't be surprised by any of that when we are not upholding that inherent right to life from the moment of conception.
Wow. I mean, let's just go ahead and end it right now.